Sorry.
And I thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, to be clear, I will support this bill because although I didn't support the original bill introducing or legislating the media ban, we have it. It's real. History can't be unwound, and I want to make this law as good as it can be made, because I care as much about the safety of our young people as anyone else in this place. But, Deputy Speaker, I lament, though, that we are trying to put lipstick on a pig, because the social media ban was ill-conceived, badly designed, and has been badly implemented. If only we could rewind history and go back and think about this from the beginning, and start again, and to listen to all of the people who ventilated their concerns about the bill when it was being designed and legislated. And there were a lot of people who voiced a lot of concerns, and I note that there were some 13 members, all of the crossbench, except for the wonderful Bridget Archer from the then opposition, who voted against the original bill when it came before this place. And we had so many concerns, and they were pretty much all ignored. Probably one of our most significant concerns was we hadn't listened to young people and to find out their perspective. The government did, quite rightly, listen to parents that had been affected and other family members, and heard of their concerns and tried to respond appropriately to their concerns. And that's good in isolation, but didn't go far enough. I don't know that the government ever actually spoke to people younger than 16 who were using social media and relying on social media, and to hear their perspective about why are they on social media, what do they find harmful about social media, do they think there's anything that could be done to make social media safer. That would have been very, very beneficial. We're also concerned that it would just be unenforceable, that it wouldn't work. Concerns that people could just enter incorrect birth dates when prompted by the social media platform. We've learned, of course, of all sorts of tricks since it was implemented, such as people just scrunching up their face and making it look a bit wrinkly, and how that would fool the platforms, fool the software. How young people are actually getting their older sibling or an older friend, or a friend who looks a bit older, to stand in front of the device's camera at the time they were verifying their age. Of course, it was always going to be the case that some young people would get around the ban using things such as virtual private networks. And the fact that there are other platforms that haven't been legislated yet, which would be places that young people would go to. Look, I'm going to out two of my stepsons. They're both now over 16, but I know that before their birthday recently, they were both still on social media, and there was nothing I could do to guarantee they would get off it. I hope Bertie and Ruru didn't mind me confessing that. They'll probably be boastful of it. In other words, the way it was designed was never going to work. And it's a bad law if it's a law that can't be enforced and a law that doesn't work. That's a bad law. It shouldn't be brought into law. Of course, there were so many other issues that were raised by us at the time. I mean, it particularly concerned me that the problem here is the behaviour or the misbehaviour of the tech companies and these platforms. But instead of more rigorously going after them and making them clean up their act, making them ensure that their online environments were safer, because heavens, they've got the technology, the know-how to make them safer if they want. These tech companies can find out any information that they want when they apply their mind to it. But instead of ensuring that the tech companies cleaned up their act and made their online environments safer, we are in effect punishing children by taking or trying to take them off social media, punishing them when they're not the offenders. They shouldn't be the ones who are punished and denied their social media when it's the tech companies that are the villains, who are the guilty party in all this. I mean, didn't we hear from so many experts in youth mental health before the ban, and we've heard since, that there's actually a lot of young people rely on social media for connectivity, particularly kids in rural and remote areas, for whom it is one of the few ways they can really connect with a large group of their friends. And we're trying to deny them that. I think that's an issue. I think that's a problem. And I've got to say, excuse me harping on about one of my favourite subjects, but we're going straight to this unachievable social media ban and ignoring the easily achieved ways or achievable ways of making the online environment safer. For example, banning gambling advertising. I mean, on one hand we're saying we'll get kids off social media, or we'll try and get kids off social media, but in our next breath we'll say, oh, we can have ads on streaming services, ads on websites, 3 ads an hour on the telly, ads in for gambling in the print media and so on. We're turning a blind eye to the things that can be achieved and racing to something that, frankly, is very appealing politically. I'll admit, when the government first announced the social media ban, my instinctive response was, that's great. That's a really good idea. I have five teenage children, 2 teenage daughters and 3 teenage stepsons. You can imagine how a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, my first response was, this is a great idea. So I could see how the government scored a lot of political points with this. At first glance, for a lot of parents and a lot of other people, it's very appealing. But of course, when I started to do my research and started to speak to subject matter experts and technical experts, child psychologists and others, I did a backflip. And I said as much in an opinion piece in the Guardian newspaper. I was the first to admit that those of us who were just jumping to applaud it actually hadn't done our homework, and that it wasn't going to be as simple or as effective as was suggested. Now, when I'm talking about what I think is the failure of it so far, I've got some pretty good research to draw on, Deputy Speaker. In fact, and these are very recent figures, May this year, research by Western Sydney University, it found that 61% of under-16s who had previously been using banned platforms reported little or no change in their social media use. That's 61% of under-16s said it hadn't made much or any difference to their social media use. That's a pretty damning figure. And that same research by Western Sydney University said that found that only 26% of people under 16 who were in the research reported that their social media use had been significantly affected. That's all the evidence you need that up until this point in time, it has not worked. I could refer you to a University of Newcastle study in June this year. They found that around, on a positive note, around 2/3, 66% of adolescents reported encountering some form of age verification requirement. That's good. But of course, we've already spoken about how easy it is to get around the age verification. For some of these platforms, you just enter a different date and you're in. But that's the end of the good news, Deputy Speaker, from the University of Newcastle. It generally found that the early impact on access and behaviour has been limited. Found that around 86% of under-16s reported accessing at least one restricted platform in the past week. It found that most adolescents continued accessing platforms through their own accounts, and that included 54 to 68% of users under the age of 16. In fact, it found little significant change in daily use or time spent on social media, particularly for that younger cohort, particularly under 13-year-olds. Now, we have this ban. It's been legislated. I actually want it to work. I wish the government well, and I'll support this bill today, because hopefully it will go some way, some small way at least. Hopefully it goes a long way to addressing that point I've made about we've got to stop punishing the kids and we've got to start going after the tech companies who have the know-how to make things such as age verification or facial recognition more effective, and they have so far chosen not to. But when you look at figures like that, Deputy Speaker, heavens, you've got to be concerned. You've got to be very, very concerned. You know, I get it. I know the government's got to get out there and crow about their achievement. I know the Prime Minister, the Minister, I know it's their job to boast about how many countries overseas are following this very closely and have expressed an interest in implementing a similar, or in the British case, hopefully an even better system. I mean, they're not going to come in here and say, well, it was ill-considered, ill-implemented and we fail. I know the politics don't allow that. But I think the government could be a bit more honest with people. And instead of crowing so much about the success of this, say, OK, small steps, we've learned a lot, it's not working nearly as effectively as we had hoped, and we're going to bust our boiler to remedy the shortfalls in this, of which the substance of this bill, Deputy Speaker, would be one small step of a raft of reforms to try and make this work. Because, you know, just cracking down on the tech companies in some way, increasing fines, that's a fraction of what's needed to turn around these figures, Deputy Speaker. It really is a fraction of what is required. And if we can't turn around these figures, then I suspect we should stop giving parents a false sense of confidence that their kids are now safe. Because according to these figures, their kids are not safe. In fact, I'd rather parents know their kids are not safe and for the parents to be more involved in remedying the situation than to have given parents a false sense of security so parents can say, OK, government solved that problem. You know, we don't need to be really alert to what our kids are seeing online on social media. Sometimes it's better to do nothing than to do something which fails and gives people a false sense of confidence. Deputy Speaker, I won't detain the House any longer. I will support it. I hope it actually achieves something. But I actually feel that my opposition to the bill, along with 12 of my colleagues, 11 from the crossbench and Bridget, who was then the member for Bass, Bridget Archer, I'm comfortable with my decision back then. But I tell you what, I'll work with the government. We'll all work with the government to try and make this work. But at some point, if they can't make it work, they should ditch it and stop giving parents that false sense of security. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.